He had everything: wealth, power, and the perfect woman. But when a billionaire pretends to be crippled to test his fiancée's love, the truth he discovers will break your heart. You won't believe the ending. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories.
Donald had always been bright, even as a child. When his father passed away, he stepped in to take over the family business. Despite his youth, he led with kindness and wisdom. Life had given him everything money could buy, and a woman he loved deeply, Jane. They had been engaged for just a month, and their wedding day was fast approaching. But there was one person who wasn't convinced: Donald's mother. As a woman, she could see through Jane's perfect act. She had noticed how Jane was cold and unkind to the maids, yet turned sweet and gentle whenever Donald was around. One evening she spoke to her son in a low, serious voice. "If you're so sure Jane truly loves you, then put her to the test." Donald hesitated. Test her? The thought felt strange and almost unfair. But the look in his mother's eyes told him she wasn't speaking out of jealousy. She was speaking out of concern. After a long pause, he slowly nodded. "All right, Mother. Let's do it." The next morning, his mother called the family doctor, and together they devised a plan. Later that day, news spread that Donald had been involved in a ghastly accident. He was rushed to the hospital, where the doctor played his part perfectly. With a heavy voice, the doctor picked up the phone and called Jane. "Your fiancé has been in a terrible accident." Within minutes, Jane was at the hospital, her face pale and her breath unsteady. She hurried down the corridor, her heels clicking against the polished floor, until she reached a private room. Her eyes widened as she saw him, the young billionaire she loved, lying in bed, both legs heavily bandaged and a thick brace supporting his neck. His skin was pale, his body still, and his gaze fixed on the ceiling. Before she could speak, the door opened and the family doctor stepped in, holding an X-ray film. He let out a deep sigh, as though the weight of the news pained him. "I don't think he will ever walk again," the doctor said gravely. His legs were badly damaged by the accident. Jane's lips parted in shock. She turned quickly to Donald, her eyes scanning his face for some sign of hope. He played his part flawlessly. A slow tear rolled from each eye, his jaw trembling as though the reality was settling into his soul. Without hesitation, Jane rushed to his side, sitting on the edge of the bed. She wrapped her arms gently around him, pressing her cheek against his. "It's all right, my love," she whispered, her voice shaky but tender. "We'll get through this together. I'm not going anywhere." Donald let out a soft, broken sound, as though the comfort both warmed and pained him. The doctor gave Jane a reassuring pat on the shoulder before quietly leaving the room. The air was thick with emotion, grief, love, and unspoken questions. Donald knew the test had only just begun. After a while, Jane released Donald from her embrace. She smoothed his hair back gently and told him she needed a moment to compose herself. He nodded weakly. Out in the corridor, the family doctor was waiting, hands folded behind his back. "Doctor," she said quickly, "is there really no hope?" The doctor shook his head slowly, his voice grave. "With injuries this severe, even with surgery, the chances are almost zero. I'm sorry, Miss Jane." Jane's shoulders slumped, her lips trembling. But as she turned away, her expression shifted, a fleeting shadow of worry that had nothing to do with Donald's pain and everything to do with her own future. She walked briskly out of the hospital, her heels tapping against the wet pavement until she reached her car. Without heading home, she instructed the driver to take her to her best friend Esther's place. It was late evening when she arrived. Inside, Esther and 2 other girls were sprawled across the couch, watching a comedy on TV. Laughter filled the air until Jane stormed in, her eyes red and swollen. "Jane!" Esther exclaimed, quickly muting the television. "What happened? You look awful." Jane dropped her bag onto the floor and collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. Her voice broke as she spoke. "Donald, hey. He was in an accident. The doctors said he will never walk again." Gasps filled the room. One of the girls covered her mouth. The other leaned forward in disbelief. Esther sat beside her and put an arm around her shoulders. "Oh my God, Jane. I'm so sorry." Jane lifted her head slowly. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her next words were soft, almost a whisper, but heavy with meaning. "Esther, I don't know if I can do this." The room went silent. Esther's mouth fell open. "Does that mean you're going to spend the rest of your life pushing a crippled man in a wheelchair, with your wedding just weeks away?" She scoffed. "Jane, you're too beautiful to be tied down like that." Another friend leaned forward, her tone sly. "There's a solution. Get a maid. Your stepsister Emily won't refuse you if you ask. She can take care of him while we enjoy ourselves, parties, trips, everything. Let's not allow him to drag you down." The suggestion settled into Jane's mind like poison. By the time she left Esther's house, her decision was made. When Donald was discharged from the hospital, he was wheeled into his home only to find a stranger waiting for him. She was a young woman, slender and soft-spoken, with warm brown eyes and a gentle smile that seemed to light the room. "This is Emily," Jane said lightly. "She'll be helping out while you recover." Emily bowed her head politely, though her life had been anything but easy. After her mother's death, she had been reduced to a servant in her own father's house. Now, she was here caring for a man confined to a wheelchair. Jane, meanwhile, was rarely home. She returned late at night, smelling of perfume and champagne, and the only time she lingered was when she needed money. At first, Donald kept his guard up. His heart was still raw from Jane's sudden coldness, and he met Emily's kindness with short answers and distant eyes. But Emily never complained. When he had a fever, she wiped his forehead with a towel. In the afternoons, she read to him from thick books, her soft voice filling the quiet rooms. She wheeled him through the garden, humming tunes he didn't recognize, and she fed him herself when the meals were ready. Slowly, so slowly he almost didn't notice. Donald found himself looking forward to her presence. The sharp edges of his grief dulled when she was around. The weight in his chest lifted when she smiled. And one afternoon, as she pushed his wheelchair under the warm sun, he realized something unexpected. He was happy again.